Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel How We Move the Decimal. In today's video I am listing buttons I photographed. Now I told you the story of the buttons when I was photographing them. I don't know how many of you watched that video or not, but my mother got a tub full of these, probably a 4-gallon tote full of these. It had a lid, one of those clear totes with a lid, full of these buttons. These buttons have been on a journey. So she bought these buttons for me to list on eBay. Always, let your loved ones know what you do. I've had both my mom and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law pick up things off the side of the road they think I could resell. Look for me for things when they are in thrift stores. My mother-in-law often works the rummage sale at her church, so she'll come and tell me to come the night before and get stuff the night before. Unfortunately, the past couple times, the majority of the stuff at the rummage sale has been ours, so I haven't got a lot from that. But my mother picked up these, and this is going to sound so horrible. She picked up these buttons pre-pandemic. So think 2019. I got them from her. I brought them home. They traveled around my house. They had quite a tour. They ended up downstairs in my great room. Then they ended up in my garage. And then apparently they ended up back in my great room. So for 3+ years, they've just been traveling around the lower level of my house with my eBay inventory. Now, I was getting pretty low on inventory, and I knew I had this big thing of buttons. And I kind of like stuff like this, like listing similars, photographing similars at the same time. I know absolutely nothing about buttons. Everything had to be Googled and eBayed and Terapeaked and all of the above. There are button groups on Facebook if you want to go join vintage button groups. I got some information from them also. But no knowledge of buttons. Honestly, a lot of stuff I just wing by the seat of my pants. For most things in life, not just selling on eBay, but I did do as much research as I could. Now, we did find these buttons around January of this year. My husband moved a box and amazingly these buttons appeared. It was like Mary Poppins' bag, but downstairs. So you never know what the great room's going to spit out at us. So I was able to do these buttons. Finally photograph them, list them, bag them. They are now in like little separate Ziploc baggies of all the lots I've done. And I got 17 listings out of them. Now, mind you, my mother paid $11 for this box of buttons. Some of the buttons were a lot harder to list, and I think they were in the previous video. They did not have any cards with them. Now, a lot of these I can sell as new because they are still on their cards. Now, do their cards look a little trashed? Yeah. Did they smell a little funny? And I think that's why they were in the garage, because of the freezer. Yeah. But now going on, almost 5 years, the smell's pretty much gone, which is great. I did have to throw some away that were just like broken or stained, but a majority ended up well. Sorry, I keep yawning. It's been a very long morning. The majority were well. The majority are still on their cards. As you can see in this picture, they are on their original cards. I went through and I just write post-it notes when I'm taking pictures of what button lot it is, so I know. Along the sides I had numbers written down of the count, so every picture I was counting how many were in there, and then I could add it all up at the end. I found that it was very frustrating when I was starting to do this because I would get interrupted and lose count. So if I just wrote down every picture, how many were in every picture, then that was great and it worked out quite well. So that helps me a lot. Also with this, I wrote down the SKUs on the 3 lots. So I had 3 random lots of buttons, and this was me just getting frustrated and wanting to be done. And I'm sure we've all had that when we're listing items. We just get super frustrated and we're like, okay, I'm done. I've listed all of these. That's it. So I did put the custom SKUs. I have A, B, and C. of my large lot of buttons. And these I do list as used because they are not all on original cards. However, if they are on the original cards, I do list them as new. So these are all on the original cards, so I'm going to go back through and list it as new instead of used, which is nice. It makes my life easier. Sorry, I got interrupted by one of my little interrupting children. So what I was saying is I knew nothing about buttons before this. Sometimes you just have to buy things. These were cheap enough. And it was, I'll take it. It's a whim. Let's see. And it gives me a chance to learn something. So I don't know if you've ever like bought something and you're like, man, I can learn all about this now. So it was nice being able to learn something new. One thing I learned is there's not a lot of value in buttons. There are in very specific buttons, and I think I had some of those, but I have no way to prove it. I had several Bakelite, or what I think was Bakelite buttons, but I'm not going to label them as Bakelite. I tested them with the brass polish, and it did change color, but I just didn't feel confident without having the cards for them to call it Bakelite. I also had several glass, china, amber, other bone materials in some of the vintage buttons. But again, I have no way of knowing that, and I don't want the buyer to come back on me and be like, this isn't what it was, and I have no way to prove it. And even if it was what it was, they could still come back and claim it's not what it is. And again, no way to prove it. So I don't want to label as that, and I just labeled it in a mixed lot, like a junk drawer lot. So hopefully, maybe someone will find them and see what their worth is and buy them and be super excited about it. I only have $11 in this, so let's see. But I don't need to charge $100 for bone buttons when I have no idea. Like, you can kind of tell by the texture. They're a little powdery, like like it doesn't rub off on your skin, but they got a pretty unique texture. If you've ever touched like a steak bone after it's like been cooked and stuff, it has that kind of texture to it. Or even like a deer's antler, if you've ever touched a shed antler or something, it had that texture to it, so you can kind of tell by the texture. But again, I don't want to be like, well, my finger said that this was a bone button, so that's why I'm charging this much for it. I can't. So I'm like, well, this is a glass button. And I do feel better about saying it's a glass button. Most of us can tell by texture what glass is. Amber was a little more difficult. I didn't label it as pearl unless it was on a board that said pearl. So that's how cautious I'm being about the buttons. And I hope you all know when I say bone, I mean like ivory or bone, but you can't sell ivory on eBay. So it's just bone. It's kind of like, I don't know, I guess PETA come at me. I don't know what my stance is on that. I would not go buy something new. Like, I wouldn't go buy a new fur or buy something brand new made out of ivory. But the vintage stuff has already kind of been made. So I'm more likely to do that, like thrifting. Now, and where do you draw the line? Like, I'm not going to wear a fox, but I'll wear a rabbit. Or I'm not going to wear fur, but I'll wear leather shoes. So I'm not going to take a moral stance on it. I've had people message me in my eBay store when I've sold vintage furs that I got several years ago. And I'm thinking like 2017 I was selling these. I went to an estate sale and she had a whole bunch of those like mink stoles, the ones that still have the faces on them. and the owner of the house had a whole bunch of those. So I ended up buying them all on 75% off sale day. And I was selling them as a large lot on eBay, and I did sell them. And didn't get a lot of money for them, but they did sell. But I got several people messaging me like, you shouldn't sell this. This is unethical. These minks are older than me, quite possibly older than my mother. I did not go to the forest and club said minks over the head and, skin them. They were very much dead for a very, very long time. I'm thinking they were very much dead for 50 plus years. So I don't know. Like, where do you draw the line at that? Would I buy fur new? Probably not, just because I don't find it appealing. Do I buy leather sandals? Yes. Do I buy leather shoes? Yes. Do I eat hamburger and meat? Yes. So where do I draw the line? Well, thank you for watching my video. Please like and subscribe and have a wonderful day.